Ishmael or Isaac? Which one was the sacrificial son of Abraham? Well, first, if we took the Islamic viewpoint on this, we would have to believe that the Jews and the Christians were total idiots. Now, I know there are some atheists out there that have no problem with that one. And we'd also have to believe that these two massive groups of idiots that didn't get along and didn't agree plotted together at least 600 years before Muhammad and his Quran was ever a thought in the then illiterate pagan Arab's mind, who spoke a totally alien language to them, and all of this just to deceive them. Now, why would the Jews and the Christian have to be idiots? Because out of the multitude of words that they could have picked to describe the sacrificial son, they got together, put their differences aside, sat down and plotted, and the word that they come up with is the word that means only son. Now that would be very stupid, especially after clearly stating that Abraham has a son named Ishmael, especially if you're trying to hide the fact that Abraham had another son at that time. In fact, they went to great details to describe how old he was and when he had both his sons. Genesis 16 explains when Ishmael was born to Abraham, and Genesis 21:5 explained the same for Isaac. Now look at the words that the Jews picked. They picked the Hebrew word Yaqid, which is defined by Brown Digger Briggs Hebrew definitions as having these meanings. It means only. It also means one. It means solitary. And it also means unique and only begotten son. Let me repeat that. Yaqid means, of its many meanings, the last, like they save the best for last. Yaqid means unique and only begotten son. Now, why would the Jews pick such a word? Why would they pick a word with unique in its definition? Because it is this very word that describes Isaac and only Isaac. And you may ask, natural question, why was Isaac unique? Well, Isaac is unique because of the very reason that caused all of this debate and controversy in the first place. His mother was barren. As is recorded in Genesis 11:30, it's recorded in Genesis 18:11. It is widely reported that his mother, Isaac's mother, was barren. We're discussing Ishmael or Isaac, who was the sacrificial son. And we're discussing now, I'm picking up, that Isaac's mother was barren, as recorded in Genesis 11:30, Genesis 18:11 through 14. And this is the reason that caused all of this debate and controversy. And it's for this reason she gave her Egyptian servant girl, servant, slave, gave her as a wife, whatever. She was a servant girl. She gave her servant girl to her husband Abraham because she didn't fully believe or fully understand what God was promising to her and Abraham in Genesis 15:3 and 4, verse 3 and 4, when it said, "And Abraham said, Behold, to me thou hast given no seed or child, and lo, one born in my house, a servant or a slave, is going to be mine heir. And behold, the word of the Lord came unto him, Abraham, saying, This shall not be thine heir. A servant shall not be your heir, but your heir shall come from your own loins, your own bowels, your own shall be your heir." She didn't fully understand that. She didn't understand that it was going to be God to give her children, not herself, not Abraham, her husband, and certainly not her servant. So as a result of her actions, she brought grief upon herself, and Abraham brought grief upon himself for agreeing to do what she asked. You remember Adam and Eve? Adam brought grief and sin upon himself for agreeing to do what Eve asked. But God being God, he did exactly as he promised. How did he do what he promised? Isaac was a miracle gift from God to both Abraham and Sarah. As he promised he was going to do, is exactly what he did. Let me repeat. Isaac was a miracle gift from God, a miracle gift. But Sarah's action caused him to produce with Hagar. Sarah's action caused Abraham to produce with Hagar, his servant, her servant. Even though when he asked God for an heir, God told him on the no uncertain terms, your servant shall not be your heir. Here we can see again, Isaac is a perfect description of a non-servant heir. Now, I read in an article that was written by a very respected Islamic apologist. His name, if I can pronounce it correctly, is Ibrahim Shidadufin. Forgive me if I pronounce your name incorrectly. In his article, he stated under the heading of Evidence from Basic Logic. A little difficult to read this on the screen, but I'll try. And he says, quote, it is known that Abraham did not have a child, due to which he was pretty upset. End quote. Due to which he was pretty upset, due to which his wife was barren. Let me continue. I quote him now. He was quite old now and still had no children. This is very depressing for people even today. Couples try various methods even today to be able to reproduce and become parents. They will try in vitro fertilization, and some who may not be able to afford or may not have access to such technology would even opt to adopt a child. Childlessness, he goes on to explain, can indeed be very depressing. I agree. He goes on to say, at such a point when Abraham had his firstborn son Ishmael, the joy and happiness would be beyond measures. Then God asking Abraham to sacrifice that child is truly a test of submission. It would be heartbreaking, he says, for any of us to be told to sacrifice our firstborn who was born after many years of marriage. This would be the true test, and as the whole idea of sacrificial son was to test Abraham, there could be no other better test than for him to sacrifice Ishmael, the firstborn. Hence, this is his conclusion now, hence, even if we use basic logic, it proves that it is only logical for the sacrificial son to be Ishmael as opposed to Isaac. Now, using some of his same basic logic, we must ask this question. How long was Hagar and Abraham married and trying to have children? Now, from my understanding, it happened immediately after Sarah gave Hagar to Abraham to lay with. Now, we're going to have to continue this on part 2. It gets much more interesting. So please watch part 2. Ishmael or Isaac.